Good morning, boys and girls. We're going to start our first lesson online today. Yesterday was our presentation. So let's do our introduction to line. Okay, an introduction to line. Here's an example of one of the pictures that we're going to be looking at by an artist named Albrecht Dürer. And this is entitled Rhinoceros. In this unit, you're going to learn about different types of lines. You're going to find lines in art, and you're going to be able to find lines in your environment. You're also going to be able to create art with different types of lines.
Artists use different kinds of lines to show different things in their works of art.
This is a picture of a rhinoceros that has a lot of different lines.
Los artistas usan diferentes tipos de líneas para mostrar diferentes cosas en sus obras de arte.
Before we're going to do that, we're going to review some things. Some things that you should know, but if you don't, we're going to go over them now. Which of these lines are horizontal? A, B, or C? Choose a rough line. Which one is the rough line? A, B, or C? Choose the line that looks most calm. Is A calm? Is B calm? Or is C calm? Let's check our answers. If you chose C for horizontal, you are correct. Lines that go up and down are vertical. Lines that go sideways, like a slide, are called diagonal. These are horizontal lines. Lines that go sideways. A good way to remember a horizontal line is you think about the horizon. When you look, you're at the beach and you're looking at the horizon line. There's usually a sun that's over right here, sunset, and the horizon is the lines that go from side to side. Good job. A rough line, if you chose A is a rough line. B is a thin line. C is a thicker line. And then out of those three, the process of elimination, out of those, you can tell because this has texture. This is a rough line. Lines that look very calm. We know that zigzag lines, think about things that have zigzag lines, lightning bolts, electricity, that's very active. These are busy lines, but they're very gentle lines. Think about ice skating. Think about trying to show wind. It's very like dancing. So these are very smooth, but they're not calm. Calm would be straight lines. If you think about these three lines as trees, if you see a tree and the branches are moving like this, you know there's probably a storm. If you see branches on the trees are gently moving, swaying back and forth like this is probably going to show some movement. Maybe there's a little bit of wind, a gentle day. If you see trees that are just standing up straight like this and they're not moving, it's probably a very calm day and there's no wind. Okay, so straight lines always show calm. Let's look at this picture. Where do you see lines that go up and down? Let's zoom in. This is actually a woodcut. The artist took a piece of wood and he carved designs on a piece of wood. And after he got all his designs cut into them, he would put ink over the wood and put some paper on top of it and kind of like a stamp. But this is a woodcut print. So the question was, where do you see lines? See lines all over the place. Where do you see straight lines? Well, at first you can't really see them, but if you zoom in closer, you can see straight lines, diagonal lines all over this picture. All the shadows and the shading are just made up of different types of lines. Where they wanted it to look like it was more shaded, they put the lines closer together. When they wanted it to look lighter, they spaced the lines further apart. So you can actually see the actual strokes on here. Remember that nothing is colored in, everything is created out of cuts in wood. Straight lines there. It's amazing, the detail. Dürer was a German artist who lived in 1515 is when this was created. Remember, 1492 was when Christopher Columbus found the United States, so 1500 would be like around that time, like 100 years after that. So if you can imagine in your mind what they looked like and what they dressed, what time period that would be. So if we click on this, it tells us vertical lines can be found in all of the scales on the leg. So vertical lines are lines that go up and down. Okay, so I think you can see lines that go up and down.
Let's look for lines in Albrecht Dürer's Rhinoceros.
Busquemos líneas en la obra Rhinoceros de Albert Dürer.
Where do you see lines that are leaning? We saw lines I showed you earlier, like on the neck, near the face. What they mean by leaning is they're like diagonal lines, okay? Where do you see lines that go from side to side? We looked at that also. We saw lines that are going from side to side on the top, the bottom, and within the picture itself. So let's look at the master artist profile. Albrecht Dürer was born in 1471 to 1528. He was a German artist. He made paintings and drawings and prints. He created art about a lot of different subjects. Okay, so let's look at a little bit more information about him. You can read with me. In the early 1500s, King Emmanuel of Portugal received a rhinoceros as a gift. A man who was visiting Portugal saw the rhinoceros and sent Albert Dürer a sketch and a description of the animal. Dürer had never actually seen a rhinoceros when he made this piece of art. Rhinoceros is a woodcut. Dürer drew the lines on the image on a block of wood, and then he carved away the wood and around the image, leaving raised lines. Many prints could be made by inking the wood cut and pressing it onto paper. Dürer was the first artist to use printmaking as a major art form. We are also going to look at this. Here's our little presentation. We do this with every unit.
As you play the media in this unit, try to identify different kinds of lines.
You can also find lines in
Mientras
music.
escuchan la cinta en esta unidad, traten de identificar diferentes tipos de líneas.
Lines in music would be notes that go up and down, and they're just different sounds. So there are lines in music also, just different. See if you can try to listen to them. This is called Dead as a Dodo and Save the Forest. Save the trees from our little blue planet. It's only 5 minutes long. Bear with it.
It's next thing to the dodo is the no-show. No single dodo is alive, no single dodo did survive. Not even married dodos thrive. Dead as the dodo, dead as the dodo, make that the dodo. Every creature we insist has died to exist. Have you ever been charged by a rhino? It's the most frightening thing that I know. Hunters hunted for its horn, they're going fast, we've all been warned. The rhino passing will be mourned. Dead as the dodo. Dead as the dodo. That's a no-no. Every creature we insist has rights to exist. Did you ever get sway way up yonder? Did you ever see a soaring condor? I doubt it, there are very few from LA Zoo to Timbuktu. When they're gone, we'll say, dead as a dodo. Dead as a dodo. That's a no-no. Every creature we insist has the right to exist.
Okay, I think that's enough of that. So yeah. So let's look at the illustrator profile. Now, whenever you see, this guy's name is Ashley Bryan. Whenever you see a number like this in parentheses, 1923, the first number is always going to be when that person was born. And if there's no number, like if it says dash and there's an empty space here and there's not another 4 more numbers, it means that person is still alive. So they were born in 1923 and he's still alive. So Ashley Bryan was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. He has 5 brothers and sisters. He enjoyed reading and often borrowed books from a public library. From the time that he was in kindergarten, he knew that he was a talented artist, and he combined this talent with the love of reading and began making his own books as gifts. He graduated from Cooper Union Art School and Columbia University. He won the Fulbright Scholarship to study art in Europe. While teaching art classes in Queens College, he began illustrating or drawing other authors' books. In 1971, The Ox and the Wonderful Horns and Other African Folk Tales, Bryan's first book as an author and illustrator was published. In 1973, he joined the Dartmouth College, and then he continued to write and illustrate books inspired by African lore. He retired from teaching in 1988 and began writing and illustrating books full-time. He has illustrated or written more than 30 books. Throughout Unit 1, you're going to be looking at his illustrations, which means his drawings, with the class, and we're going to be discussing his use of lines. You're going to be identifying thick and thin lines, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, zigzag, and curved lines, and you'll discuss lines used to illustrate people, animals, and buildings. We're also going to look at this, and this is our literature and art for Unit 1.
As you watch Mama Don't Allow by Thatcher Hurd, think about how the artist used various line qualities and line directions.
Mientras observan Mama Don't Allow por Thatcher Hurd, piensen cómo el artista utilizó varias calidades y direcciones de líneas.
Miles got a saxophone for his birthday.
Wow! Oh, how nice. Oh, how awful.
Keep it down, son. Miles practiced and practiced until his mama and papa couldn't stand it anymore.
Why don't you practice outside, dear?
And so he did, as loud as could be.
Oh! Too loud!
grateful.
What a racket!
Yeah.
Unbearable!
Terrible dog.
No!
Miles strolled down Main Street where he met a drummer named Al. Up Swamp Lane where he met a guitarist named Bert. And over Bayou Bridge where he met a trumpet player named Doc.
Hey, let's play some music.
Loud music.
Let's be a band. The Swamp Band.
And they played as loud as they could. Soon the whole town cried out,
Swamp Band's playing in the swamp.
but down in the swamp at the edge of town, the sharp-toothed, long-tailed, yellow-eyed alligators said,
We love that Swamp Band music.
You do?
You do? Oh, yeah. We like it loud.
You do?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Come and play for the alligator ball.
When? Saturday night when the sun goes down.
Meet you at the riverboat.
We'll be there.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Saturday night when the sun went down, the alligators came from miles around. They were dressed in their finest. The Swamp Band played their favorite song. The Swamp Band played far into the night. When the music was over, the band was hungry.
What's for dinner?
So were the alligators.
Something tender. Something juicy.
Uh-oh.
We're in for it now.
What am I doing here?
The alligators snapped their jaws and smacked their lips.
Wait. How about one more song before dinner?
Okay, but make it short. Make it sweet.
And so the band sang A Lullaby of Swampland.
1 and 2 and...
When the moon is rising and the moss hangs low, when the swamp is quiet and the waters move slow, down in the gooey damp mud, in the gooey damp mud. The alligators fell fast asleep. Miles piloted the riverboat back to Swampville. The swamp band tiptoed home, playing that lullaby as quiet as could be. And Mama said,
Oh, how nice.
And that was Mama Don't Allow by Thacker Hurd. Let's look at some prints. This is one of my favorite prints. It's by William H. Johnson. It's called Children at the Ice Cream Stand. And this was done in 1939 to 1942. It's tempera paint with ink and paper on pencil. William Johnson is a very famous American artist. And this one is called Night Heron. Heron is a type of bird. Another American artist, painted in 1986 and 1987. And if you look closely, you can see that here's his beak and his head and its wing. This is an abstract. Abstract means it doesn't look exactly like a photograph, but you can tell that it's a bird, so it's an abstracted view of a bird. Lots of different lines, lots of different textures. Very interesting. I'm going to start with our first lesson. Lesson on lines. The first picture we're going to be looking at is by Joaquin Torres Garcia. It's called New York City Bird's Eye View.
Do you ever have to stand in a line?
¿Alguna vez han tenido que ponerse en una línea?
So we're learning about lines, our spotlight, and music. Before we do this, our objectives today is we're going to be learning about thick and thin, smooth, rough, solid, and broken lines in artwork. You're going to be able to evaluate your own artwork using the 4 steps of art criticism. If you want to, you can create a design with thick, thin, smooth, rough, solid, and broken lines. And you should also be able to recognize that some artists create abstract art. So let's find the music. This is by Billy Taylor. Line in music refers to a way that melody moves higher and lower, or up and down, or the same. So that's what we talk about when we talk about line in music. Okay, to relate to the concept of music, in music, to line in art, you're going to play Billy Taylor's CAG, a jazz waltz that creates a melodic line based on the sound of the notes C, A, and G. You should, if you want to, you can try drawing thick, thin, smooth, rough lines that you think goes with the music, or you can just listen. And that was CAG by Billy Taylor. So let's look at the works of art on these pages. The artist uses a lot of different kinds of lines to create these paintings.
Let's look for lines in the paintings.
Busquemos líneas en las pinturas.
At the time these works were painted, many artists were making abstract art. Abstract art does not show objects the way that they really look. Seeing like an artist, if you look around your room right now, you can find lines like those in these paintings. We're going to study both works of art to find different types of lines. Can you find thick, thin, smooth, rough, solid, and broken lines? Let's just look through these real quick. This is by Mr. Garcia in New York City, the bird's eye view, which means you're up in the sky and you're looking down at things, what a bird would see. See thick lines, I see thin lines, I see wavy lines, diagonal lines, curvy lines, dotted lines. Okay, thick lines, thin lines. There's a lot of lines in this picture, huh? So let's look at this one. This is by an artist named Wasily Kandinsky, and he is from Russia. He's a Russian artist. And this is called Composition Number 8 and was painted in 1923. Where can we see thick and thin lines? Let's look, zoom in. Thick lines. Here's a thick one. There's some thick ones here, and I see some really, really thin ones. Curved lines. Wow, dotted lines. All kinds of lines combined together with different types of shapes. Bumpy lines. Awesome. Using lines. A line is a mark made by an artist's tool as it moves. Here are different kinds of lines. We know that this is a thick line. This is a thin line. This says smooth line. Rough. So if you're combining these two, smooth, you can see that this has a lot of texture. Texture is how something feels. This looks like it's a rough line. Like if you were to take a crayon and put it draw it over concrete, it would probably make this kind of line because it would be kind of bumpy, rough. Solid, this could also be a solid line. And then this would be broken. So you have thick and thin. You can have smooth and rough. You can also have a solid line or a broken line, or also known as a dotted line.
What words can you use to talk about lines?
¿Qué palabras pueden usar para hablar acerca de líneas?
So, making different lines with your classmates. When you are at school and you're told to stand in a straight line, like when you're going to lunch or when you're lining up to come to resources or you're lining up to go home, you usually line up in a single file line, which is a single file line, which means it makes a very thin line. When you line up side by side or you're not standing in a straight line, it becomes a thick line. Can you think of other ways that you can make different types of lines if you were to line up with your classmates? Think about how this student used their lines. This was Ty Brannon, age 7 years old, who created this picture. Created a picture of some buildings using thick, thin lines, dotted lines, curved lines, different types of lines, thick lines and thin lines. How many different ways can you use lines? Think of a design that you can make with thick and thin, smooth and rough, solid and broken, and fill your paper with lines. If you want to, you can brush with watercolor if you have some, or you can just color, or you can just color with crayons, or whatever it is that you have at home, or you can just use your pencil, or you can use your pen. These are some things that you could use if you have it at home. You could even use glue for your dotted lines to let that dry. So here's an example of how many ways you can use lines. where we're talking about thinking of the design that you can make. Fill your paper up. When you're done, you can either color in the different blocks or the white spaces, or you can paint them in. You can create anything that you want today for art as long as you create different types of lines and use all these lines that we talked about. Afterwards, you could, if you feel like writing, you should be able to describe what place or thing did you show in your design. And then you should be able to answer the question, what kinds of lines that you used? Did you fill your paper? You should also be able to tell what is the mood or feeling in your artwork. You can give your work a title if you like. Did you use 6 different kinds of lines in your design?
In what ways can you describe lines?
¿De qué maneras pueden describir las líneas?
And you have completed lesson 1. Let's check to see if we can pull something up. Maybe you'll get lucky and we'll not have to get tested today. Okay, it looks like that's it for the day. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.